All right, welcome everybody to the 2021 revamped version, edition, episode, whatever, of the Professionally Evil Lunch and Learn. This is a fun series of videos we started a while back, and the goal is really, honestly, just to skip the normal vendor BS webinar stuff where we talk about sales, products, and all the other annoying stuff. This is just a chance for us to rant and have fun and talk about issues in security. We've got a bunch of articles and things that are currently in the news, things that we thought would be fun. But that's our goal. Like, there's no slides. We're not going to beat you over the head and go buy our products, right? I mean, obviously, Secure Ideas pays for us to do this, so we would love for you guys to all be customers. I recognize some of the names. Some of you are. Yeah, it's good to have everybody. A couple of things to be aware of. You can chat in the chat panel there if you want to. Feel free to throw that out there. We would also love to have you in the Professionally Evil Slack team. It's just a free Slack team that we've got set up. I think that was posted in the Slack. I'm not sure if it got... When new people join, I don't know if you can see old posts, so I'm just going to repost it there. If you go to tiny.si/Slack, you can join that Slack team for free. And then we have a Pell, Professionally Evil Lunch and Learn. There's a Pell channel, and I'm switching over to that too so I can see. We can have conversations there if things come up, if you want to submit stuff. A couple of things to be aware of. We are recording this. So one, ultimately, we want to post this stuff on YouTube because people like to go back and watch. Two, that means don't be an ass. Don't post stuff or say stuff or share stuff that is going to get us flagged on YouTube or cause problems or make us delete you from ever coming to stuff like this again. We're here to have fun. So cool. Play along. If you want to contribute, feel free. In the past, we've muted everybody's microphone and we've just said, hey, let's chat via chat because we wanted to avoid complications. I'm kind of cool. I'm going to leave microphones turned on and let folks say, hey, if you want to jump in and say something, feel free. If you don't, feel free. That's cool too. If it becomes a problem, we'll mute people. That right? We'll go that route. So with that said, let me start some introductions. My name is Nathan Sweaney. I'm one of the security consultants here at Secure Ideas. Been around a really long time. Yeah, I've got a wide range of experience in, I started out in development and then moved into sysadmin stuff and network stuff before getting into security with credit cards and kind of all over the map. Mick, I'll let you introduce yourself.
Sure. So I'm Mick. I also started in development, and then I did more development. Then I did some development after that, and then I did some more development. And then kind of during that process, I became the annoying security interested developer pissing off everyone on the team. And that eventually became my primary responsibility. And I still do development on the side.
Ochaun?
Keep it simple. I code, I teach, I hack. So that's who I am, what I do for Secure Ideas. Pretty much, unfortunately, I'm the one on this call cursed to be full-time development between that and pen testing. So they got to escape for most of it. I still have to do it.
Yeah. Well, all right. So let's just, without further ado, let's jump in and get going. The first thing that I wanted to talk about, and I was going to throw an article up here. A couple of weeks ago, we got an executive order from President Biden on cybersecurity. The executive order on improving the nation's cybersecurity. Posted the link there. I'll post over in Slack as well. There's a lot to this. There's been lots of articles and lots of discussion and lots of back and forth and whatnot. But I think there's some points in here that a lot of people are missing out on, aren't going into detail. So I don't know if everybody's had a chance to read this. It's fairly long. We're not going to cover the whole thing, but just some of the high level points. Like the first section really that gets brought up is talking about threat information sharing between the government and private sector. I think that's a really good thing. I'm excited to see this. Are either of you guys a member of InfraGard?
Nah.
No.
Yes, me? No.
You should be. Is anybody else on the call InfraGard members? Does anybody know what I'm talking about? No? We'll see if it shows up in chat. So InfraGard is a I'm going like it's an FBI program where they coordinate folks in the private sector with Omaha. Cool, Aaron. They coordinate people in the private sector in different industries with FBI folks so that you can basically just share information. Most of the information they share is not secret or classified or sensitive at all. Sometimes they share some stuff that's fairly sensitive, but they share a lot of like what's the word I'm looking for? Attack details of indicators of compromise, ICs, stuff like that. So you can say, here, let me go back and look at my data. But what do you guys think about this? Like, what are the problems with the government and private sector sharing data, stuff like that?
So I'm going to borrow a fancy convoluted term from university that I just fell in love with, and that is non-trivial. So when a professor would ask, well, why don't you use the research to move this and this, that, and the other? The PhD student could reply, or master's student could reply, that's a non-trivial problem to solve. That's sending a signal. And non-trivial is beautiful in academia. It covers a wide variety of use cases. It covers like brute forcing an AES 256 key and putting the man on the moon, right? Both are well within like remote possibility, but one of them is more likely than another. But either way, it's hard. It's a non-trivial type of problem. And I see it that way when information sharing between the government and the private sector. Like when I was doing research and doing the deep dive for that blog post and the executive order, I stumbled across an article like discussing this very same problem. And it was not even from that wasn't even from the Trump administration, the Obama administration. It was dated like 2003, information sharing between the public and private sector. So this is a recurring and continual problem because you can share too much, right? The whole point of keeping information confidential is for national security concerns. But if you don't tell these cloud providers is what
that's a good point.
President Biden refers to, calls out specifically. If you don't notify these cloud providers, they aren't sure what to tell their SOCs and what sort of traffic to monitor a network. And they have to run their own parallel investigations and that if they see something is amiss within their network. Well, go ahead.
Well, I was going to finding the balance between what you share and what you're allowed to share and how much to share is hard, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, like we use cloud. We store a bunch of stuff in AWS, right? We store stuff in Google. Is Amazon and Google, are they allowed to share details about our data with the government? Because if we do work for other countries or international enterprises that maybe cross borders, they might be more hesitant all of a sudden to use us, which is going to make us hesitant to use these cloud providers. So how do you find that balance? I think that'll be a challenge.
I mean, data classification is always a big problem. It's just another layer of big problem.
Yeah,
added on.
Well, and the authority, who has the authority, right? Is by signing this, if they require Amazon to share data with the government, is that necessarily saying, okay, China is no more Amazon, right? You're not gonna. I mean, I don't know how much AWS usage is in China anyway, but pick whatever country, right? Mm-hmm. Are they going to say no? We have to assume the NSA has access to all this, so we're not gonna. I mean, you kind of assume that anyway, but that's a good point on the non-trivial thing there, right? That's a good way of saying it. Another one of the big categories there is the cyber incident reporting. I don't know what I think about that. Right now, I don't think there aren't any standard report requirements across the board for organizations. Is there? Like some states have some stuff, but
yeah, and those timelines vary in their mix and their like technical plausibility, as well as their technical plausibility is one, as well as authority of enforcing. So if your company is based in state A, does that and you offer services to everyone in the United States and probably the world, does that mean you have to be subject to state A's laws, state B's laws as well? Because you have some customers in state B, for example, so on and so forth.
Well, it gets more complicated than that too, because like with CCPA, the California, what is the second C? California Consumer Protection Act, maybe? I don't know.
Yeah.
And with GDPR, you've got this idea that it doesn't matter what state they're in, it's whose data do you have, right?
Yeah.
So you've got organization A in one state is using service provider B in another state, helping a customer C in another state who actually is a citizen of state D, right? So now you've got 4 different states that potentially that could impact. I personally, I like the idea of having federal legislation say, here's the standard, right? If there's this level of breach, you have to do this. But I don't know. I see the complexity. It goes back to the non-trivial thing.
Yeah, but it's not legislation. It's just like written off straight off president's desk.
Yeah.
And it doesn't, and like, we don't have necessarily an SBOM, like a software bill of materials for data. We're just sort of.
We're on a software bill of materials for software. We might think we
exactly.
Hey, you're getting ahead. That's the next category.
Oh, is it?
But no, I mean, the fact that it's just an executive order, that's important. A lot of people have been making a big deal about this. Oh my gosh, they're establishing this and that. All in an executive order. I hate this chat window. I can only see a small amount of it. It scrolls up so fast. Exactly.
Oh, hey, you can pop it out.
Can I pop it out? Oh, beautiful. Thank you. Yeah. Awesome. That helps. Okay.
So
the, I don't know that the pop out helped. The for most of these things, the executive order says basically we have to do this stuff.
Yeah.
You go figure out how to do that. Right. It's a, man, I'm going blank on words today. What do you call that? Where you're
delegation.
Delegation. Thank you.
Voluntold.
Yeah. The president is basically saying, Homeland Security, you're responsible for figuring this out, which I sort of hate that. I mean, I don't want to get into the politics of,
It's not just Homeland Security. It's OMB. It's also NIST. Each of them have their own timelines and deadlines. Like, for example, in 15 days, you're supposed to have a written. The deadlines vary between 15 days in which this order is executed, which is coming up soon. Then we've got 30 days. Then we've got 60 and 90 days.
Yeah.
And then by the time we reach about 360 days, NIST is supposed to have these recurring and continual processes in place, not only to have these standards written, but also to update them as the technology landscape changes.
Yeah, I think Aaron commented there that the next administration could come in and change it. And I think one thing to be aware of is that, or one thing to understand about executive orders in general is, yes, they get changed administration to administration, but this type of executive order where the president is not just saying, we're not going to prosecute weed, right? Like, that's different. This is I'm tasking these administrations, these agencies to go do this thing. Those types of regulations don't get rolled back as easily. They could, right? A president could create a massive sweeping executive order that wipes out all of that. That's rare. Normally what happens is you have very fine point executive orders that either do something or tell somebody to do something. And then all of the administrative regulatory stuff that builds up over the years along with it, that just that stays there, right? It gets changed little by little.
It's like technical debt.
Yeah, it really is. It's a democratic debt. I don't know.
The debt of democracy.
It's actually the opposite of democracy, because it's the executive branch just saying, screw Congress, this is what we're going to do. But I don't want to get into that. Yeah. Executive debt. I like it. No, on the incident reporting thing, I think that'll be good. It'll be interesting to see what people say. You get into authority. Like we've had customers that have been compromised and then they didn't tell anybody because they don't have to. And, you know, I don't know if you guys have been involved in that, but I've been involved in some discussions where, you know, we've told them, hey, you need to talk to your lawyers, but we really think that you should be upfront and public about this because eventually it's going to get out. You know, sometimes that stuff gets out and sometimes it doesn't, but I don't know. It'll be interesting. It'll be interesting to see. The SBOM thing, Ochaun, or I don't know, maybe it was Mick brought up SBOM. That's one of the next
started it.
Yeah.
No.
Who wants to explain what an SBOM is? Because I'm not sure if everybody knows that.
I'm sipping water, Mick.
Oh, man.
That's all you, Mick.
So software bill of materials. So what all is the stuff, the components, modules, third-party libraries, the libraries they depend upon, the libraries those depend upon, so on, that make up your software. That's kind of the long and short of it. Now, producing that for a piece of software, if you write the thing entirely yourself, maybe doable, maybe.
Sometimes,
but to take a really kind of general example, I've been building a target app for one of our classes recently, and it's got actually different parts to it. But the client app part of it, which is just the bit that runs in the browser, that's built on Create React app. And if you look in the package.json for this, for anyone familiar with Node apps, there are 15 dependencies in there total right now, right? But when you actually install it, nearly 2,000 dependencies get installed because dependencies have dependencies have
2,000.
dependencies. Yeah,
Whew.
yeah. It's I think 1,975 or something like that. It's very close to 2,000, and
Jeez.
Those are just the ones that we've got visibility on, but you start getting into things where you got bindings to other languages, right? A node module's got C bindings using some other libraries under the hood. I don't even think there's visibility on that.
None. I can tell you, as someone who spent, whose last engagement was spending like a month or two staring at code, there's no visibility on that. You just copy the DLLs where you need to go.
Where'd my window go? Aaron mentioned SNCC. There's several companies. That's a there's a, I don't want to say it's a new technology, but it's a new area of the industry where companies are trying to figure out how do we get a handle on this. I'll come back to that, Fausto. There are lots of companies that are trying to help people figure this out and trying to figure out what that process looks like. I don't think they're doing great yet, but it's the whole commoditization of security services. I've talked about that in the past some, but the idea that when somebody comes up with a new idea, they can charge whatever they want for it, and it's really popular. Everybody talks about it, but nobody's really doing it. And then there's some competitors, and more people start joining in and doing it. Think like next gen antivirus that eventually became EDR, right? Like pretty soon you've got several competitor products, and they're all fighting for feature sets and ideas, and distinguishing themselves. And then it gets to the point where they all basically have the same features because they recognize what's good and what works and what doesn't. And then the price starts coming down because they're trying to compete more for the average market, not just the big government people. And then they get to the point where the kind of the end of the commoditization process is where it gets purchased by something bigger, and it gets rolled into your router or your operating system or something like that. I see the same thing with the whole SBOM idea. Figuring out dependencies. Like, it's a new idea. We're pretty high up on that commoditization slide. But I think it will eventually get to the point where it's normal.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Well, go ahead, Ochaun.
Last thing, and we can move on to a different topic because we can. I thank you for keeping us away, hosting, and keeping us from trailing down too many rabbit holes. Someone being on the front lines, the ability to actually look at your dependencies it's different between platforms. Like if you've got something in like C# where you've got NuGet, if you've got a built-in package manager, there's usually a utility that you can use to at least see what packages you are importing and what versions they are. Node is a great example. And I scream it from the top of the lungs. to anyone who will listen, if you run Node, do an NPM audit or a Yarn audit, you would be surprised, and then wait a week and then run it again. You'd be surprised at how many criticals and highs and how quickly the entire the entire supply chain changes over. How many vulnerabilities that gets discovered in those tertiary, quintiary, those far-flung dependencies.
Yeah, I wanted to run back to what Fausto said earlier about the executive order only applies to companies that provide services to the Fed.
Immediately, yeah.
Yes, that is the immediate, like, this is where it's starting. Because honestly, for the president to make a standard or requirement like that applies to all businesses, even, progressive presidents tend to be a little bit more liberal with their, let me affect more people with administrative, maybe both sides do it, but that would still be even significant overreach, based on what we've had. But the issue is that most companies, maybe not most, but the big companies that are really affected by this, the services they provide that also get applied to everybody. So eventually those same requirements are going to be pushed down to us. It's the same reason that every website that you go to now requires you to click a button saying, yes, I know you use cookies, just like every other freaking website in the history of the world, because they all use cookies to maintain state dependency. But that has to be because GDPR said you have to do this for European citizens. And it's easier for websites to say, we're going to do this for everybody, rather than just figure out whether or not you're from Europe or not. We're going to see the same thing.
And we, in the industry, like in information security and cybersecurity in general, when these directives are made, and we have, and then afterward we have NIST creating a body of standards, we take that because the federal government has that sort of pull. They don't even have to put the legislation of everyone has to do this. The fact that it is a standard from the federal government, that's how we got NIST 853.
Yep. I've seen contract. Oh, sorry.
And let you continue the thought. That's how we got that. That's what I'm hoping will be the ultimate positive result we get out of this.
Yep. I have seen contracts with companies that said, you as our vendor, you have to comply with this and this and this, and all related, similar, I don't know, whatever, industry best practice standards. So we had a company come to us and say, hey, we have to have a PCI test. We don't do PCI. We don't do credit cards. We have nothing to do with credit cards at all. But our contract with this particular vendor says we have to abide by all, industry best practice standards. I can see this going the same route.
I think once something gets accepted as the thing that a reasonable person would do, it then becomes negligent to not do it. Yeah.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
Let's see. What else was in there? Was there anything else that was interesting? I know there's some other topics I can't think of offhand.
Michael's asking, how do you handle accountability? We're already halfway in.
Well, it's a great. So the review board. I know Kevin talked about this on a whatever, the Shared Security podcast yesterday or Wednesday. The Cybersecurity Safety Review Board. Did you guys read about that?
Yeah, I did read about that. That's being ordered and that's being organized. The buy-in is from, I believe, all of the FCB. I'm trying to get my acronyms right, because these are new style acronyms, right? But you're essentially the citizen-facing bureaus have all representation that buy in. And so a lot of the idea from this executive order that I just didn't have time to write down in the blog is a lot of integration and overlap. And that's one of the key themes that that's found throughout. So, okay, I know that there's corporate bureaucracy. With this executive order, I'm telling you, you can talk to these people. It is the administrative, it is administrative permissions handling.
Yeah.
So it's like you're allowed integration to integrate with everyone.
Right. So the concern I have, and it'll all depend on how they implement it, right? It always comes down to implementation. Basically, the order is establishing the creation of something like the NTSB, the National Transportation Safety Board, which, anytime there's a plane accident at all, whether it's a crash or just a bump into each other or whatever, the NTSB comes in and they basically have almost global authority to do whatever they want and tell people, you have to give us all this data. We're going to analyze everything. And then we're going to go report to the government and say, here's the problem and what needs to be done to fix it. That's kind of what he's calling for here. And that idea of having a board that can go into any private company potentially and say, give us your data, show us exactly what happened and what you did about it, and we're going to tell you what you did wrong and then report to the government how to fix it. I don't think that'll go over so well. But the question is how it gets implemented, right?
Yeah, that's a scary thought. It seems a bit like audit with more teeth.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. It's
which I don't want to chuck auditors under the bus or anything, but when there are people that haven't, I'm trying to be nice, but when there are people that haven't actually been involved in the implementation, a lot of the times their idea of what should have happened isn't practical.
Yeah.
So
yeah, that's the concern.
Yeah.
One thing that I thought was interesting, if you look at the membership, the executive order says the membership of the board has to include representatives from Department of Defense, Department of Justice, CISA, NSA, and FBI, as well as private sector companies and whatnot. My concern there is like, that's all like intelligence defense focused. We're not talking FTC. We're not talking about Department of Commerce and Trade, right? This is not a, how do we protect consumers? This is militarily focused. I feel like,
because that's the precedent. That's where you've got to be like, okay, let's keep America running.
Yeah.
And then we can handle some of the consumer facing stuff has to be handled out after the fact.
Yeah.
Because if you've got thousands and millions of accounts being created on a variety of social platforms to spread, whether it's to spread information or to exploit various cloud providers, every social network providers, I should say. That's another thing about this executive order. What counts as a cloud provider? Like I know AWS, GCP, and Azure, that's automatically in. But is Facebook a cloud provider? Right.
So to Aaron mention, I think it was Aaron over here mentioned that it only applies to government or federal things. Actually, the Cyber Safety Review Board is what they call it, CSRB. I'm afraid we're going to use that acronym again in the future. That actually says it applies to any cyber incidents affecting FCEB information systems or non-federal systems, threat activity, vulnerabilities, mitigation activities, and agency responses. Effectively, the executive order calls for the creation of the board and then says the board needs to determine what's considered a significant incident and how you're going to investigate it. And he's calling for that whole process to be created. So it'll be interesting to see. Yeah, I don't know. But any other comments on this before we move on? We spent quite a bit of time on that. I know it was the big one. Nothing?
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Yeah, create the board and let them make rules, Aaron. That's welcome to the there was a guy wrote a book. Oh, it's like 60, 70 years ago. Might have been further back than that, called The Administrative State. And that's basically what we've done with America, is turned it into more, we're managed by administrative agencies rather than Congress. But moving on after that political statement, I don't remember, Ochaun, I don't remember if you posted this or Corey or somebody yesterday. RFC 9000. QUIC is officially finished. It's released.
QUIC.
Do we care? Does this matter? Actually, can one of you guys summarize what QUIC is?
Yeah, Ochaun can.
No, I cannot actually.
All right. So here's the basic simplistic version. QUIC is a protocol designed to, I don't remember if it replaces or if it supplements HTTP. I think HTTP 3, it's a wrapper, right? QUIC basically extends web-based interactions for websites to be done over UDP, so they can be faster. Right? If you remember back to your networking, TCP is slower, but it has more confirmation that packets are actually getting through. Right? You have that full three-way handshake, and then you have session ID numbers, and if things come in the wrong order, they can be reassembled, and you can request missing packets and all that. UDP is just, I don't care if you get this or not, I'm sending it to you, which is great for video and voice. And if you drop a packet, you just move on. That's what QUIC is designed to do. I don't know if this matters at this point. It's I feel like with HTTP, with HTTP 3, we've already moved down the route where this was a neat idea that has kind of been supplanted by Google pushing forward with Chrome stuff. I don't know. Am I off base, or do you have a different opinion?
The only implementation I know of QUIC is actually the one inside the Chromium at this point. So
yeah, I'll post the RFC here.
We only have 2 browsers now.
Yeah, right. Effectively, yeah.
Right. We only have Chromium.
Firefox.
Yeah, we have Chromium. No, Aaron. Opera is Chromium based.
Chromium.
So we have 2. So we have 2 browsers. We have Chromium.
Edge is Chrome. Well, so Safari.
It's an Apple product. That's not even a browser.
Does anybody use Safari? Is like IE. The only reason you use it is to install a real browser.
You might have heard of this platform called iOS. It's got quite a few users.
Fair enough.
Quite a few.
Most of them don't bother installing other browsers. And when they do, that browser's a wrapper for Safari.
Yeah. That's true.
Chromium-based browsers. So you've got even the new Microsoft Edge. You've got Chromium for native, for open source installations, and you've also got the formal powerhouse Google Chrome, and you've also got Firefox. And I would say that derivative, you also have the Tor browser as a derivative, which is just a port of Firefox. But basically, if you're going on the internet and not counting the specialty browser Safari, that's it. Microsoft announced that they were retiring Internet Explorer in 2022, I believe. And so that means there are fewer. If you want to use the internet, or if you want to create a site, you're only optimizing for 3 browsers now.
Which, I'll be honest, as a person that got into web development in the early 2000s, late 90s, I love that. Do you know how many times I wrote the most convoluted JavaScript to get around some stupid box model?
Yeah.
Ochaun, you weren't even around then. You don't have a clue what I'm talking about. It was a nightmare.
But here's the way Jason puts it. Don't go out of your way to kick off our IE users, because we work with some clients that are legacy. Yes, legacy.
But even today's legacy is still like IE9, right? I mean, it's not like with IE5 and before, it was every single JavaScript that you had, every single little bit, it was, if they're using IE4, do this. If IE3, do this. If IE5, do this. If it wasn't Firefox, what was Firefox before? It was
Firefox, Netscape.
No, there was Firefox had another name. They changed it at one point, but whatever. Yeah, but you had to go through all the different browsers and say, if you're using this, do this. It was a nightmare because they all rendered the DOM slightly differently. The borders were different, the paddings were different, and how it was a nightmare. Firebird, maybe that's what I was thinking of.
Maybe, yeah, that's right. But IE 5.5 was on Mac and Windows and used different rendering models depending on
the OS. Yeah, so it wasn't just if you're using IE 5.5. It was if you're using IE 5.5 and you're on Windows, do this. Or if you're on, it was awesome.
Yeah.
All right, let's move on. So this other article. This was more of just something I thought was interesting. Microsoft Windows has built-in ransomware protection. I don't use Windows, so I don't know much about this. Quick takes. You guys are on Windows, aren't you?
How did the hacker get away?
Tell me, Mike. How did the hacker get away?
He just ran somewhere.
He ran somewhere. Oh man.
I'm gonna do.
Ryan says it only works if you rely on Windows Defender alone.
Yes, exactly. But you'd be surprised how many organizations you will get with that.
Yeah. So I'll be honest, Defender has gotten really good. Yeah. As an attacker, I don't like Defender. I used to like it. I'm like, oh, good. They don't have anything better. They only have Defender. We're in. Now it's like, crap. Can we please turn this off? Defender by itself is somewhat limited when you're able to add in the what's the domain based, the enterprise level. I can't remember the acronym. A something. Advanced Threat Protection. Is it ATP? I think. That adds
sounds right.
The centralized management, the monitoring, detection, responsive stuff like that. That significantly increased. I feel like it puts it almost on par with some of the more advanced EDR tools out there. So, but I don't know. I just thought that was funny that Windows 10 has built-in ransomware protection. Effectively, what it does is it marks certain sections of your stored space, certain directories that can only be written by certain applications. What's the problem with that?
Because you won't turn it, Ryan. The reason why it's turned on by default is because the enterprise will not turn it on.
Maybe.
We're talking about reliable ones, but the idea is to put in some protection for default. Ransom, it's coming to the point where, as a security professional, you have to have. I'm trying to prepare like a prepared written statement for ransomware, because the headline goes into, oh, the hackers got into and I read the headline. I go into the article, the ones that actually talk into the technical details, and I'm like, why do they have RDP out in the open internet?
Yeah. The hackers got in. No, they didn't. You left the door open. I mean, like some script kiddie got in.
So no, that still counts.
They also fished for credentials. Okay. Why is your organization built such a way that you have to have users click on links, rely on links and email attachments to do the business? Accounting is not terrible. They're not terrible users for working and doing their job and clicking on a spreadsheet. No, the entire business processes and Kevin talks about this a lot. The entire processes for your organization was designed as such so that the communication between one accountant to the other, the best way to do it is a wide open file share and sending emailing spreadsheets back and forth. And so that was that's not endpoint protect. That's not good design. That's not endpoint protection at all. And the third one that often comes up is unpatched software.
Yeah. I think the idea of this, of having, I mean, from a security control perspective, of saying we have a section of the disk space that can only be written to by certain programs, right? We're whitelisting certain programs. Nobody else can write to it. I think it's a good idea. It's a reason. I don't know how successful it'll be. Obviously, like everything, it comes back to implementation. I'm curious about like the social engineering side of it.
Yeah. I mean, you're never going to want to count on a particular security control always working 100% of the time.
What's going to happen is, now what we've done is we said, okay, the malware that pops up on the screen for grandma, instead of just encrypting her data, now it has to tell her to, open this and type this, or copy and paste this to here, or, what I mean? Like, I don't think it's going to be an end all be all protection, but it could help some.
Whenever the subject of social engineering comes up, I like pointing to the Facebook self-XSS warning, which if you've ever browsed to Facebook with your dev tools open, the consoles has this gigantic warning: don't paste random scripts on the internet you don't understand into this box and run them.
And do you know why they have that warning?
I do, because I gave a talk at B-Sides DC a few years back, and there was a Facebook person in the audience that kept referencing this during the talk. And he came up and he talked to me afterward, and they did it because they were seeing people doing this to themselves.
Exactly.
it wasn't a huge percentage, but it was several thousand, like thousands of people, because they have such a big user base.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah. What was the there was something the other day I saw. It was like some kid's clothing thing or toy thing or whatever, and on the back there was a label on it that said, please remove the child before washing this or something like that. It's like somebody made them put that on there because that was a problem that actually happened. All right, let's move on to the stolen identities with the gig workers. I thought this was pretty awesome. Quick summary. I think like 12 or so Brazilians were arrested. It might have been more than that. 14 Brazilian citizens were arrested. Basically what they did was they stole people's identity. They signed up. They used those identities to sign up for Instacart, Uber, different ride share and delivery services and whatnot. And then they sold those accounts to people who legally were not able to work in the US and use and sign up themselves. So then those people could get paid. This was all in big part because of COVID, right? With everybody in quarantine, those services all went through the roof. How do you stop this?
Well, this is another example of one of those where technology fits in our lives is to solve problems. And so here we've got a socio-political problem. We've got a population that is willing to work, but is not able to work for legal reasons. I'm going to circumvent the whole illegal immigrant issue. I'm pole vaulting around that because I don't want this to get canceled or whatever. I'm not going to address that issue at all. But this is one of those intersection where, okay, there's a supply, there's a demand. Let's make it happen. And so I think the prevention here is the immediate concern is, okay, let's make identity theft a bit harder. Let's pursue criminals. That's the immediate solution. The hard part is actually going to be solving the problem that would lead to people to run some exploits around this, because it's all systems, right?
Yeah.
Everyone's trying to hack the planet. They're trying to get the best out of life they can, and this is just one example of how to do that with tech in this like socio-political space.
Yeah, I think the thing that sticks out for me is that these types of attacks are never going to go away. I always use the word, con man. Do you know where con man come from? The word?
What, confidence?
It's a confidence man. Yeah. It's basically a grifter who's really good at convincing people to do things. And that, I don't remember exactly the source, but there's been uses of that word or that phrase, like literally for thousands of years. Like these types of attacks, when people see, exactly as Ochaun said, there's a desire to do something. There's people willing to do it. There's going to be people come in and say, okay, let me figure out a way to combine those two and make it happen. I got to give them props for the creativity though. They definitely took advantage of the system and it worked out well for them, other than the getting arrested and going into jail thing.
And I wish we could have brought Jason on if find time. He's an executive now. But one thing I would ask him is for his input, like, because he loves the movie Hackers, and I'm just thinking this is just hacking the planet. So what does that actually mean? What context? What are the rules here? What's in scope? What's out of scope? You know?
All right, what do we got next? Where are we at on time? We've got a few more minutes here. The AirTags. Do you guys have your AirTags yet?
AirTags?
I don't lose things.
AirTags, the Apple AirTags. So I thought, you remember when Tile come out and everybody? So the article here is that AirTags can be used to figure out when your house is empty.
Yeah, Apple just
come back to that
Tile.
in a second. Exactly, Apple invented Tile. I'll be honest, it's refreshing to see Apple steal ideas from somebody other than Android for once. So
I think they've been doing that for a while.
Probably. So the idea of the AirTag, if you're not familiar with Tile, is you get your little dongle device sticker, whatever, you post it to your remote control or your phone or your keys, and then when you lose them, you can use another device to go track it down and figure out where it's at. Great idea. I initially thought the Tile was stupid. That'll never work. My father-in-law has like 5 or 6 of them. I mean, he's got one on every remote. He's got one on his phone. There are multiple sets of keys, and it's actually, I've seen him use it. It's kind of convenient when they're saying, "Hey, who left this where? Hold on, let me pull up my phone. Oh, there it is." Yeah. Did you read, either one of you get a chance to read the article and see what the issue was here?
Yeah. I mean, I skimmed it, but I can probably summarize it.
Yeah, go ahead.
So essentially, you put your Tile someplace in the vicinity of somebody's house, if it's a reasonably isolated house, and when there hasn't been a phone near it for a while, you know that they are not home.
Yep. Which, I mean, what you know is that there's an Apple device in the home, or not in the home, right? You don't know for sure, which, if they have a Mac sitting on their desk that is, not gone to sleep or whatever, like it would serve that case too. It just seems, I don't know, this is clearly clickbait journalism, but this is one example. I've seen so many articles of AirTags can be used for this, AirTags can be used for that. There's so many other ways to do that, right? Like, oh my gosh, did you know that if you look in somebody's driveway, you can tell whether or not their car's there, and you can find out when people aren't home?
If they're in an isolated house, they probably took their car with them when they left.
Oh, you're kidding me. Wes asked about Tile, because he was saying one of the things about AirTags that's neat is it uses any local device to any iOS or Apple device to ping out to the internet to help you find the location. Tile, the way Tile does is, like if let's say I have a Tile on my bicycle and it's stolen, I don't remember if I have to mark it as stolen or if there's somewhere, basically anybody else that has the Tile app on their phone, it will see my devices and it will report it up to headquarters. So it's not as ubiquitous as Apple, as the AirPod, because with Apple, or AirTag, they can use any Apple device, whether you have the Tile app or not. With Tile, it only works with people that have the other Tile app, which I think is their biggest hindrance from not
because anybody without a Tile market share probably going to install the Tile app.
Exactly. Yeah. If there was a way to, like, I'm honestly, to be surprised, I'm surprised Google or Apple didn't buy Tile a long time ago. Like it just seemed like a natural thing, but it could still happen. I could see Google pulling it up now that Apple's got a competing product.
I'm assuming that there's like a stack of papers. It's just like, all right, you've got this much budgeted for that like horizontal integration. Who are you going to buy? We can sell this in 6 months. It'll take a couple of years to get to market with this one.
Yeah. So two points I think that are interesting there. Wes said you can use the Find My Device network to send your own data. I saw that hack. Basically, it's really, really, really slow, but you can basically use you can create your own. It's not a modem, but it's basically a modem to communicate with other Apple devices and say, I'm an AirTag. Here's my ID. And then you can request a new ID from the network, and effectively you can do a 1 or 0, right? You've got like binary communications. So very, very slowly, I mean, we're talking about bits per hour. You can send traffic out to the internet and have you can exfiltrate data that way. Assuming somebody else has a Apple device within, people are like, oh, well, you could use this to steal data out of a sensitive network. If somebody's bringing their iPhone into range of your device, it's not that sensitive of a network. But anyway, go ahead.
No, we're short on time.
Yeah.
Go.
Sidewalk is similar. I'm going to skip over Sidewalk, but that's really cool if you guys haven't checked into that. The last one here that I wanted to talk about was the ransomware. Insurance firms basically bowing out of ransomware. Let me throw this over here. The short version is some insurance companies are saying, hey, we're not going to pay ransomware fees anymore. So let's start with the opinion. Is it better to pay if you get ransomware? Is it better to pay the ransom or not?
I actually recorded a video. Like, I wish there was like a think macro we could throw on.
Yeah.
But if when you're staring down, like, you don't have a backup plan and you're trying to think of business continuity. Let's think of it. Let's take out the technical parts, because that's not how we're going to get the executives in on this decision. Think about it. What incentives does an organization have to restore your systems once the ransom has been paid? And we saw that with Colonial. They had a tool, but it honestly would be faster for them to use their own backups than to pay the ransom and then try to start up. So even if the tool, depending on the encryption algorithm used, decryption would be slower than in the initial encryption process, depending on the algorithm.
Right.
There's also you're also taking, like, well, does this tool actually work? They got the money. So what incentive is there to actually fix the problem after the fact?
So I've worked with a lot of insurance people, and I've been told that most of the time, from the insurance perspective, most companies pay it. It's a little bit lower percentage when you look at the ones that go public, but the vast majority of the companies that never announced they were compromised or they were breached or had ransomware, the vast majority of them pay it. And a lot of the time it's the insurance company that reimburses them for that. And almost every time the people get their money back, they get their data back. And the reason is the attackers look at it and they say, if we don't give them their data back, that's going to be all over the news and nobody will pay us in the future.
Yeah.
So they have a business incentive to unlock the data and make sure. And that's why a lot of them actually provide support, like the dark side guys with Colonial, right? Like, they actually provided tech support. They helped them get the data back and it was going slow. And they're like, here, let us help you. They tried, right? They offered to make it, to try to help out, because they knew, one, they don't want that got huge politically and they didn't want people coming after them. But
but ransomware I don't want to use the term business model, but I can't think of a better one. Ransomware as a business model has always depended on having a certain amount of kind of good faith there, because it is monetarily driven. Otherwise it's just vandalism. There's not much to gain from it.
Yeah. The problem is, I honestly don't know where I sit on this. Like, politically, the drive right now is we can't pay, we shouldn't pay, never pay. Mm-hmm. And it's one of those things, I don't know, there's a dilemma. There's one of those like philosophical dilemmas terms for it, where we're all better if nobody pays. Yeah. It's like the flu vaccine, right?
Prisoner's dilemma. Yeah.
Everybody's better if everybody gets the vaccine, but I'm not necessarily better if I do. So when it's the prisoner's dilemma. That's what it is. People have to decide, am I going to do what's a little bit better for me, or am I going to do what's a lot better for everybody else? And it's a hard thing. We
don't have the support networks. And, well, if insurance is bowing out, that's probably a bad sign. And we don't have the support networks. Like, if you're compromised and it was a nation state actor that did it, came in, rocked the shop, like, you did the best you could, but you were competing at a state level, and they got in, and they wrecked shop. Okay. The investigation happens. We detected, we figured out like where it came from and what to do that. Now, what about the remediation efforts? Now, what about the business continuity? How do we restore everything and then be productive and profitable after losing a huge percentage of our digital assets and lost months of productivity due to the bureaucracy that is a federal investigation? The EO covers that, but a
little bit, yeah.
Yeah, it does. But,
well, and it's a challenge because, like, you have some organizations that, you know what, we've done everything we possibly can, and we were still hit because China's coming after us, and we can't stop that. What are we going to do, right? Like, we had no chance. But then you also have other organizations that are like, you know what, screw you, we're not going to do anything, we don't care. And then they get hit. Maybe it's by a nation state, maybe it's by some script kiddie in their parents' basement. Do they, you know what I mean? Like, we don't have any easy way to distinguish that unless the Cyber Safety Review Board comes in and says, oh, look, you didn't even try. Screw you, hippie. You're out of business. You really tried, but you couldn't help it. So I don't know. I hate to see that level of bureaucracy, but
define try. And
oh,
gosh. Can I maybe do some campaign funds, just do some pay off a lobbyist to say we did the best we could?
No, well, but that's where like think about when we do pen tests, right? We see organizations where, you know, like you start out with a vulnerability scan and we've got 12 pages of red, you know, critical findings in Nessus. And it's like, holy crap, like, what's the point? Write the report now, we're done. Like, you're not doing anything.
The Christmas tree. Yeah.
Yeah. And then you've got other organizations where it's like, all right, we really got to dive in here. You know, they've locked down the attack surface. Everything is patched, right? They've got account tiering and they're using multi-factor everywhere. You know what I mean? Like, you've got organizations that really try and some that don't. And I think that's the industry challenge right now, is how do we distinguish between the two? Because there's not a good way to do it. PCI is helping in the payment industry. Like, PCI has done a good job of that. For all the problems with PCI, it has done a good job of fixing some of these issues. I don't know how we roll that out to everywhere else. All right. Well, let's try. I wanted to say one more thing because somebody else, let me scroll back into the chat here. Aaron said it's the same conversation about paying ransom for hostages. It very is similar. When I read this article, the first thought came to me was Harrison Ford. You know what movie?
Ransom?
Nope.
Wait,
Air Force One.
Get off my plane.
Do you remember Air Force? Get off my plane. Yeah, I had to pull up the quote here. If you remember, President James Marshall, I don't think his relation to Ochaun, was given a speech at the beginning of the movie somewhere in Europe. And he says, atrocity and terror are not political weapons. And to those who would use them, your day is over. We will never negotiate. We will no longer tolerate. And we will no longer be afraid. It's your turn to be afraid. And then his plane got hijacked and he fought him off and everybody, you know, was happy. But, you know, there were some pretty, like, that movie, I don't remember when that came out. I think it was the 90s, wasn't it? There were some great points in there where had, you know, he challenged with like, hey, where's the line? Like, I'm willing to sacrifice myself, but am I willing to sacrifice my coworkers or my family or my kids? Ransomware is not that different in a lot of aspects. So interesting conversations.
I knew it wasn't Harrison Ford. Ransom's Mel Gibson.
Ransom's Mel Gibson. Yeah. That was a good one too. Denzel Washington did a similar one, like in South America somewhere.
Oh, Man on Fire.
Yeah, that was good. There's been a lot of good movies here. We should take all the lessons we've learned from those movies and apply those to ransomware. I think I just gave somebody an incredible talk idea.
But those are fictional.
Oh, come on now. You're saying IT is not fictional?
Security is.
This is a cyberpunk dystopia. Come on.
Exactly. All right. The cake is a lie. Exactly, Ryan. We are right at the top of the hour. So let's go ahead and wrap it up. It's been fun, everybody. Glad you got to join us. If you're watching on YouTube, we're going to do these on a regular basis. I think the goal is to do it the last Friday of the month. And normally noon Central, 1 Eastern. That way we get the West Coast as well there in the middle.
Wow. It actually is the last Friday. How did we get to the last Friday of the month so fast?
I know. Is that not crazy? It's insane. So anyway, it's been great. Ochaun, Mick, thank you guys for your feedback. And we'll see you next month.